Hey, what's going on, guys? OG Albina here, coach of your Golden State War Turtles, bringing you guys my NCP Wi-Fi Season 1 draft analysis. So this should be the first video going up on the channel. If so, hello, welcome. Hope you enjoy your stay if you choose to stick around. Mostly going to be doing Draft League content, Pokemon Draft League content. And yeah, so let's jump into the draft analysis. So first overall, I ended up having the 7th pick overall, which isn't great. It isn't horrible, but definitely not, the top 5 pick or, a wheel pick or anything like that. So I went in with the mindset of, okay, we should just grab whatever's best left on the board and kind of build around it and go from there. So my pick comes around and I see Zygarde still sitting there, and I jumped on it. Zygarde is definitely one of my favorite moves in the format. Has one of the most spammable moves in the game, 1,000 arrows, no immunities. So your flying types, your levitate users, stuff like that, they cannot, get away from it, despite it being a ground type. So very spammable, move that has little to no drawback. Has great setup options in Dragon Dance and Coil. You can even run Double Dance. And in addition to those setup options, it has great bulk behind it. So despite having the 4 times weakness to ice, it can be EV'd in a way that you can take those non-stab ice moves or those HP ices and still be able to get, a coil off, a dragon dance off, or a nice, a big hit off. It's also great with a band. So, Banded 1,000 arrows, like I said, little to no drawback move. Banded outrage is always hurt. And Banded extreme speed. The access to extreme speed definitely helps it out if you aren't boosting speed just to pick off weakened mons, especially if you're banded, because you can that boost. And it is also a great Z user. Spoilers, this is one of our Z users. We get 2 per drop. And I ended up going with this as my first. It helps. The reason I went with it on Zygarde over another one is because it kind of helps it push through its checks, such as, those bulky waters or those bulky grasses that would like to switch in and check it. You get +1, +2, and then you blow them away with the Z move, and then you just kind of basically steamroll through the rest of your opponent's team. In addition to, all this offensive prowess, it also has great utility. Great utility options in stuff like Flare, which is an amazing move. It's not super widely distributed. The ability to paralyze everything besides electric type is super valuable to help with speed control and the rest of the team, neuter some threats, that kind of thing. Gets access to moves like Camouflage, which is pretty cool in some matchups if you want to, camouflage yourself into a normal type. You have extreme speed, something like that, to get around those HP ices. Find a way to set up and win that way. And yeah, so really excited to use Zygarde. It's going to be really good. So second pick, we ended up grabbing Keldeo. So Keldeo isn't a mon I've used before. I've always wanted to. I've always just barely pushed off drafting it, but I decided to pick it up this time. It has that great 108 speed tier, so it gives something to outspeed those base 100s, which is super nice. It has a nice dual stab, and spam moves like Scald and Secret Sword and stuff like that. Scald, obviously, super spammable in the fact that you can get that burn chance, which helps wear down its checks over time, so those mons that would, normally switch on all grass types, if you can get a burn off, you can either neuter it, physically, on the attacking side, or you can slowly chip away at it, to where it's not going to be a check for very much longer, if it doesn't have that reliable recovery. It has access to Calm Mind for potential setup sweeping sets. Very good choice. It's a decent Scarfer. Really, really good with specs, in my opinion. Not much left to switch in, especially if you do get that burn like I was saying earlier. It also has Taunt, which is very useful in the fact that it helps it beat those bulky waters that Zygarde hates. Those bulky waters that Zygarde hates, you can kind of switch in Keldeo, maybe throw off a Taunt, use them as setup fodder, throw up a sub, something like that, slowly wear those down, maybe even beat them, to where Zygarde can come in later and put some pretty big pressure on the opposing team, which is very cool. So Keldeo is going to be a very good on our team this season. Very excited to use it. So round 3, going into this, I saw a lot of the fairies were going off the board really, really fast. People were picking up their fairies like wildfire, and I didn't want to miss out on one because that's a very important type. So we ended up grabbing Florges. Florges is a very, very good fairy in my opinion. It's a bit passive. It's not super threatening on the offensive side, but it does give me Wish Pass, which is super nice for Zygarde, and a mon to come right after this. it helps, you know, those bulkier mons stay healthy that don't necessarily have that reliable recovery, to where they can come back in later and still do some work. It also gives me defog, which is super nice, so I don't, you know, get stacked on, so my team isn't slowly worn down over time. So never can have too much defog. So it's essentially just a super solid fairy. It does get access to stuff like Calm Mind and stuff like that. I don't know how often I'm going to be running, you know, like offensive Florges or be running Calm Mind Florges, but it's definitely an option that can definitely come in some matches and throw some people off guard. Oh, and as well, it is also a cleric, so get away those, you know, nasty burns and toxics and stuff like that, so that the rest of the team can put in work. So it's a really good support option. It particularly supports this next mon really well, our next pick, which is Mega Aggron. Mega Aggron is, it completes our Fairy Dragon Steel Core, which is super nice. It gives me an amazing Ice Resist for Zygarde. It kind of shrugs off everything that Zygarde isn't a big fan of, so those Fairy types, opposing dragons, and Ice type moves. Aggron shrugs off like it's nothing with, you know, the immense defense stat that it has and the ability filter. It really doesn't care about too much. Gives me a rocker, which is nice because I haven't had a rocker up to this point. Has access to Curse, so Curse Aggron can definitely come in some games and potentially win for me. The only downside to Aggron being that it does not have any form of reliable recovery. But, as I said earlier, picking up Florges, that definitely helps passing Fat Wishes off into it and potentially getting up to full, because if I can consistently pass Wishes into Aggron, it's going to be a really, really annoying one. It's really hard to take down if you support it well with that wish support. So next up, I wanted to pick up a little bit of speed. Our team was it wasn't slow up to this point, but we didn't have anything over that 110 mark. So I ended up picking up Azelf. Azelf is one of my favorite mons in the format. I've used to great success in the past. Has that 115 speed too, so it definitely outspeeds those 110s, which are pretty prevalent and pretty scary. So it definitely gives me something to outspeed and pressure those. It also has a nice 125 in both of its attack stats, so that makes it a pretty excellent breaker, in conjunction with, you know, a Life Orb, maybe an Expert Belt or Z. And spoilers, this is our second Z user. So mostly because of, you know, having 125 in both those attack stats and having crazy coverage. So I mean, it obviously gets, like, you know, Psychic stats, so Psychic Psyshock. It's stuff like Energy Ball, Flamethrower, Thunderbolt, Signal Beam, Shadow Ball. Just pretty much any special move you can think of, it pretty much gets. Minus, I think it doesn't get base speed, which sucks, but not too big of a deal. It gives me a nice pivot. It has U-turn. Gives me another Taunter, which you can never have enough of, in my opinion. Going up against, you know, those fatter teams. Gives me another rocker, so takes the pressure off Aggron as being our only rocker up to this point if it can't fit around its moveset. Or if Aggron doesn't come a weekend, Azelf does. It gives us options. And also can be pretty scary sweeping-wise. It is pretty frail. I believe it has 70 in all of its defenses, which is pretty subpar. But if you can force the right switches or maybe get in on the right thing and get a nasty pot up, not much is going to be able to stop it. Get a fair few amount of Azelf sweeps with the right positioning. So next up, I ended up grabbing Serena. So I'm going to be honest, I'm not the hugest fan of Serena. I originally wanted Decidueye in this spot, but that ended up going before I could grab it, unfortunately. And I believe I also wanted Calm Minds. But Serena gives me a spinner, which I needed a little bit more hazard control because Florges was my only defog right now, and Florges often doesn't want to fit defog onto its moveset. So this takes the pressure off of that as my only form of hazard control, my only defogger. It also gives me a ground resist, which I didn't have up to this point. I had an immunity in Azelf, but that doesn't really count how frail that mon is. So it gives me a semi-reliable switch into those ground types, so I don't just straight up boost to ground spam, which is really nice. It's a good pivot, and, you know, with access to U-turn. It's a cleric, so it's my second cleric. It gets their access to aromatherapy. And has a really cool ability in Queenly Majesty to avoid priority and stuff like that. So in certain matchups, that could definitely come in handy. It's not the most broken ability, the most busted, but it's definitely useful and pretty niche. And yeah, so that's Serena for you. Next up, decided to grab Drapion. So I'm a firm believer in that every draft should shoot to have both a grounded poison and a dark type, and Drapion fulfills both those for me. Dark types, in my opinion, are super important simply because of the amount of bulky psychics running around and how scary they can be if you give them the move slot to only need to run psychic. For example, Reuniclus, the nasty acid armor, recover, calm mind psychic set. That gives me nightmares, especially if you don't have a dark type. Not much is threatening it or scaring it to where it's not going to set up all over you and then just win. So that's definitely good in that aspect. And the grounded poison aspect, it gives me a way to disperse T-spikes without getting one of my removers poisoned. So my team definitely doesn't appreciate the T-spikes. Stuff like Zygarde, especially for the subset, sub Keldeo, like sub Calm Mind, or just definitely doesn't like being toxic. Serena doesn't want to be toxic either, and one of those two would have to be toxic in order for me to remove those toxic spikes at this point. So that grounded poison definitely helps out in that aspect. Has access to knockoff, great AV user, access to Swords Dance. Pursuit is super nice to have as well, just to try and trap those psychics if you can, if you position yourself correctly. Yeah, Drapion's definitely going to be a big member on the team. It's always, like I said, always super nice to have that grounded poison and that dark type. So next up, we end up grabbing Staraptor. So up to this point, I noticed that my team, it wasn't necessarily passive, but it lacked a bit of a wall breaking potential. So I wanted to pick up something that was going to force some switches, going to poke some holes in some fatter teams and stuff like that. And I feel like Staraptor really helped with that. Reckless, Brave Birds, and Double Edges are terrifying to switch into if you are not a Rock type or a Steel type. And even if you are a Rock or Steel type, you have to be wary of switching into a close combat, which definitely isn't fun. Take close combat from a Staraptor, if even if it's just Scarf, or if it's Banded, yeah, you're definitely not taking it. It gives me, another U-turn, some more momentum to get my other scary mons like Zygarde, Keldeo, Azelf, stuff like that. It also gets access to Defog, so that's 3 removal options, which is nice. I don't know how often I'm going to run Defog Staraptor, but if it's like a last ditch effort and I need to get it off and I have to click it, in order to get some T-spikes off the field or some, rocks off the field just to support the rest of the team better, it's nice to have that option. This is what I'm getting around. So, yeah, it also has access to Intimidate. So, Volcaraptor is definitely set. I could definitely run it. I don't see myself running it too often on this team, just with the defensive support that I have. Staraptor's role is definitely going to be more so in the offensive breaking type of category, but it's definitely an option, another option nice to have. Just that Intimidate support and kind of buffer those physical attackers a little bit. Next up, we ended up grabbing Alola Marowak. So this is another wall breaker for me, which is super nice. Like I said, we were lacking a little bit in the wall breaking potential. So Alola Marowak is another one really, really hard to switch into. It gives me rocks, so it gives me a 3rd rocker, which is super nice, again, just to not put too much pressure on my other mons. Slow base speed, which doesn't sound like a good thing when you hear like, oh, it's 45 base speed, but I was also looking at my team and noticing I was pretty weak to Trick Room. Most of my team, even my bulkier mons, other than Aggron, were pretty considerably fast. So a good Trick Room, builder team, or a good Trick Room abuser, absolutely decimated me. It claimed only a couple, depending on the mon and its coverage and stuff like that. So I wanted something that was kind of a Trick Room deterrent, that base 45 speed, min speed, underspeed a lot of stuff, which could definitely scare off, just the idea of doing that, because switching into Marowak, like I said, isn't fun, especially not as fun if you can't revenge it and it's faster than you and it gets knocked out anyways. Also gets access to 2 really, really good abilities. One being Rockhead, so not taking recoil from those Flare Blitzes is obviously super, super nice, but what drew me to it even more so, was Lightning Rod. So if you look at my team right now, I have 1 electric immunity, and that's Zygarde. And I don't want to pressure Zygarde into a role to where it has to take on those electric types, especially when they can just run HP Ice to, at least 2-hit KO it, sometimes even OHKO it, depending on what kind of Zygarde I'm running or what, percentage of health I'm at. So Marowak is another kind of Volt Switch absorber, like a Volt Switch stopper, to not let people Volt Switch and U-turn all over me and just gain all the momentum and beat me down. So, yeah. So with our second to last pick, we ended up picking up Crustle. So, I have Philosophy in Tier 5. Obviously, your tier 5 mon's not going to come super often. It's not going to be the most important member of your team. It's not going to be your kill leader or anything like that. But in my tier 5, I want it to force prep. A lot of people draft tier 5s more like, meme picks and stuff like that because they're like, I'm never going to use it. But I want to draft tier 5s to where my opponent's prepping and they look at it and they'd be like, it's probably not coming, but it could, and I need to bring something for it because if it doesn't, I'll lose. Crustal is definitely one of those. It gives me spikes, it gives me rocks, more rocks, so it gives me that stack option. And with Sturdy and the release of Custom Berry, it gives me that hazard stack option because I can basically get up 2 layers of hazards essentially for free. Not only that, it also gives me Shell Smash. Well, like I said, Shell Smash Crustal isn't going to come too often. It is a nice option to have because, like I said, if someone sleeps on it and doesn't prep for it at all, late game, I could win with Crustal, and then they would be the guy that got swept by Shell Smash Crustal in the game. So definitely a good mod to have for some prep, get some hazard stack up on the field, and support the rest of the team pretty well. So with our final pick, we ended up going with Rotom Fan. Rotom Fan gives me an electric type, so it kind of I had a lot of U-turn up to this point, but I hadn't had any Volt Switch, so this kind of completes the Volt Turn aspect of my draft. It gives me Defog, which is nice, so another Defog, that's 4 altogether. So pretty decent hazard support on this team, where I don't really have to worry about getting stacked, in my opinion. Against most teams and in most matchups, I think I will be okay. It also has, super cool support options and Clean Split, and it gets pretty much every status under the sun. T-Wave, Will-O-Wisp, Toxic, and then access to Trick, which can be really fun against fatter teams to punish mobs that definitely don't want Scarf or Specs tricked onto it and they want to switch up their moves.